Hannah Peters clutched her tattered umbrella tighter as the Boston rain pounded against the cracked plastic, each drop a reminder of how little stood between her and the elements. The bus stop's flickering light cast sickly shadows across the empty street, making the already forgotten corner of South Harbor District feel abandoned. The sound came first, a gasp, then a shuffling noise, almost lost beneath the rhythmic drumming of raindrops hitting concrete. Hannah squinted through the downpour, barely making out a hunched silhouette stumbling between parked cars across the street, one hand pressed against a brick wall for support. Something about the figure's desperation cut through Hannah's exhaustion from a 12-hour day teaching underprivileged kids, followed by tutoring sessions that paid just enough to keep her studio apartment's lights on. Years of working with children had honed her instincts for distress, and those instincts screamed that someone needed help. The elderly woman collapsed just as Hannah reached her, a small cry escaping lips too proud to scream despite the circumstances. Under the streetlight, Hannah could see an elegance in the woman's features that even pain couldn't diminish. High cheekbones, silver hair now plastered against her forehead. "My heart," the woman whispered, fingers clutching at an expensive cashmere coat that seemed wildly out of place in this neighborhood. Her accent was faint but distinctive, old-world European layered beneath decades of American polish. Hannah didn't hesitate, supporting the woman's weight while fumbling for her phone. The rain had intensified, soaking through her canvas shoes and cheap cotton jacket, but the weight of the stranger leaning against her felt somehow more significant than any discomfort. "Stay with me," Hannah urged, noticing how the woman's gaze kept drifting toward the shadows between buildings, as if searching for something beyond physical pain. There was fear there, not just of death, but something more immediate and tangible. The approaching headlights made Hannah wave frantically, hoping for assistance, until she noticed how the elderly woman stiffened against her, trying to shrink from view. The black sedan slowed, then accelerated past them, but Hannah couldn't shake the feeling they'd been assessed rather than overlooked. "Not safe," the woman murmured, gripping Hannah's wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes, dark and intelligent, locked with Hannah's, communicating something urgent beyond her medical distress. Hannah made a split-second decision, supporting the woman toward the all-night diner 3 blocks away. Each step was a struggle against the woman's weakening strength and the weather's mounting fury. Inside the fluorescent harshness of Donnie's diner, the woman's elegant appearance became more striking, designer clothes soaked through, an antique gold locket hanging from her neck. She didn't belong here any more than a swan belonged in a drainage ditch. "Call this number," she whispered, pressing a small business card into Hannah's palm as the waitress rushed over. "Tell them Grace needs help, but not where I am. Not yet. First, I must tell you something important." The paramedics arrived before Hannah could process the strange request, their efficiency creating a bubble of activity in the otherwise empty diner. Grace refused to release Hannah's hand, insisting that the young teacher accompany her to Boston Memorial. "I'll come with you," Hannah promised, though her mind raced with practical concerns. Tomorrow's lesson plans, the stack of ungraded papers in her bag, the fact that her ancient Honda was still parked 6 blocks away. Something about Grace's vulnerability penetrated Hannah's carefully constructed wall of self-sufficiency. The ambulance ride created an island of urgency, separate from Hannah's ordinary struggles. Rent due in 3 days, the classroom supplies she'd purchased with her own money, the ramen noodles waiting in her cupboard. In this suspended reality, only the steady beep of monitoring equipment and Grace's grip on her hand seemed real. "They found me," Grace whispered when the paramedic turned away momentarily. "After 40 years of hiding in plain sight, they finally found me. And now they'll come for him too." Hannah leaned closer, unsure if she was hearing confusion brought on by medication or something more sinister. "Who found you, Grace? Who are you worried about?" The hospital corridor swallowed them in fluorescent efficiency, nurses creating a barrier between Hannah and the mysterious woman. "Family only beyond this point," they insisted, despite Grace's protests. Hannah slumped into a waiting room chair, suddenly aware of her rain-soaked clothes, the late hour, and the bizarreness of her situation. The business card Grace had pressed into her hand bore only a phone number. No name, no company, just 10 digits embossed in simple black type against cream cardstock. Her thumb hovered over the dial button as exhaustion wrestled with curiosity and an unexplainable sense of responsibility. The call connected after just half a ring, as if someone had been waiting with the phone in hand. "Grace needs help," Hannah said simply, then added, "She's at Boston Memorial," before she could second-guess breaking the woman's instruction. Something in that voice demanded directness rather than explanation. The line went dead without acknowledgement, leaving Hannah staring at her phone screen, wondering if she'd done the right thing or somehow made a terrible mistake. The waiting room clock ticked past midnight, marking the transition into another day of scraping by. A nurse appeared with an update. Mild heart attack, she's stabilized, and permission for a brief visit. Grace looked smaller against the white hospital sheets, her elegance diminished, but not erased by the standard-issue gown and monitoring equipment. "You stayed," Grace observed with surprise that made Hannah wonder about the people who usually populated this woman's life. "They'll be coming now, both sides, and you've placed yourself between them by helping me. The Castellini family never forgives betrayal," Grace whispered, her fingers trembling as she twisted the platinum band on her finger. "I was their accountant's daughter, never meant to fall in love with the heir to their rival family." Hannah struggled to process this revelation. Mob families, forbidden love, decades of hiding. It sounded like fiction, yet the fear in Grace's eyes was undeniably real. The monitor beside the bed registered a concerning spike in heart rate as the elderly woman clutched Hannah's hand tighter. "My son doesn't know the truth about his father's death. He believes it was a random shooting, not an execution," Grace continued, her voice dropping even lower. "He built his empire thinking he was avenging a tragedy, not continuing a blood feud started before his birth." Grace reached for her purse, which Hannah had salvaged from the street, extracting a worn photograph of a handsome young man in an expensive suit. "This is William, my son. He heads the Blackwell organization now, but he has no idea the Castellinis are his father's killers." The hospital room door swung open before Hannah could respond, admitting a nurse with medication and a stern reminder about visiting hours ending soon. The interruption felt deliberate, as if orchestrated to prevent further revelations. "They'll come for me tonight," Grace whispered once they were alone again, her eyes darting toward the window where raindrops created shifting shadows across the glass. "Both families, the Castellinis wanting to finish what they started, and William's men wanting to protect me without understanding why I'm truly in danger." Hannah shook her head, overwhelmed by information that placed her squarely in the middle of something dangerous and complicated. "I should call the police," she suggested, reaching for her phone. Grace's hand shot out with surprising strength, stopping Hannah mid-motion. "The police can't help. Half of them are on someone's payroll anyway, and the other half wouldn't survive the night if they interfered." A commotion in the hallway drew Hannah's attention. Raised voices, heavy footsteps. A nurse's protest cut short. Grace's expression shifted from fear to resignation, her shoulders straightening despite her frailty. "It's too late. They're here," she murmured, pressing something cold and metallic into Hannah's palm. The gold locket from around her neck. "This contains everything William needs to know, but only give it to him directly. Trust no one else." The hospital room door crashed open, revealing 3 men in expensive suits, their expressions cold and assessing as their eyes swept from Grace to Hannah. "Ms. Wright, your son sent us to secure your safety," the tallest one stated, his Boston accent at odds with his Italian features. "Go," Grace urged Hannah, her eyes communicating more than her words. "Take the service elevator to the basement parking level and don't look back. You have 20 minutes before they realize what I've given you." Hannah clutched the locket in her palm as she navigated the hospital's maze of corridors, her heart pounding wildly against her ribs. The service elevator hummed quietly as it descended, each floor representing another step away from the life she recognized. The basement parking level was eerily silent, concrete pillars creating shadows deep enough to hide any number of threats. Hannah moved swiftly between parked cars, grateful for once that her shabby clothes helped her blend into the background. A black SUV with tinted windows rolled silently into the garage, positioning itself between Hannah and the exit ramp. She ducked behind a concrete pillar, breath caught in her throat as the vehicle's rear door opened. The man who emerged moved with the controlled grace of a predator, his tall frame wrapped in a tailored overcoat that couldn't quite disguise the power beneath. His face remained in shadow until he passed under a ceiling light, revealing features that matched the photograph Grace had shown her. William Blackwell surveyed the garage with calculating eyes, his hand resting casually near his jacket's inner pocket. "I know you're here," he called, his voice carrying easily in the concrete chamber. "The person who found my mother and called from this location." Hannah weighed her options: remain hidden and risk being discovered, or reveal herself and potentially walk into a trap. The decision was made for her when William's gaze locked directly onto her hiding place, as if he'd known her location all along. "I just want to talk," he said, making no move to approach, allowing her the space to emerge on her own terms. "My mother rarely trusts strangers. The fact that she let you help her means something. Hannah stepped into the light, clutching her bag against her chest like armor, the locket burning a hole in her pocket. She had a heart attack, she explained, the words sounding hollow against the enormity of what she now understood. William's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, becoming marginally less threatening. Yet you stayed with her instead of calling an ambulance and continuing with your evening. Why? The question was reasonable but loaded with subtext and suspicion. Hannah opted for simple truth, knowing instinctively that this man would detect any attempt at deception. She was scared of something beyond the heart attack. Someone was following her, Hannah explained, watching as William's jaw tightened. She made me promise not to leave her alone. William closed the distance between them with measured steps, stopping just far enough away to maintain propriety, but close enough for Hannah to see the flecks of gold in his otherwise dark eyes. And what did my mother tell you during this time together? The locket seemed to grow heavier in Hannah's pocket, Grace's warnings echoing in her mind. She said to give you this, Hannah replied, holding out the antique piece of jewelry, and to trust no one else with it. William's eyes widened fractionally, the first genuine reaction he'd displayed, before his composure reasserted itself. He reached for the locket, his fingers brushing against Hannah's palm in a contact that felt unexpectedly significant. Ms. Peters, William said, startling Hannah with the use of her name, a name she hadn't given him. 5th grade teacher at Westbrook Elementary, resident of apartment 4B at Cedar Street Apartments, and apparently now courier of family secrets. Hannah's blood ran cold at the casual display of how thoroughly he'd investigated her in the short time since she'd called. I'm not involved in whatever this is, she insisted, taking an instinctive step backward. William opened the locket with practiced ease, revealing not photographs, but a tiny microchip nestled where a picture should have been. His expression darkened as he pocketed it without examination. You became involved the moment you helped Grace write in that street, he corrected, gesturing toward the SUV. My men will take you home, and by morning, this will feel like a strange dream, nothing more. Hannah thought of her classroom waiting for her in just 6 hours, 28 children depending on her to arrive with lesson plans and patience. I can take the bus, she insisted, unwilling to surrender the last fragments of her normal life. William's smile didn't reach his eyes. The men who were following my mother, they saw you. They know who you are now, and they're not known for leaving loose ends, he explained with clinical detachment. The implication hung in the air between them, unspoken but unmistakable. Hannah's safety was now contingent on William's protection, a fact he seemed to take for granted but which threatened everything she'd built. My students, she began, but William cut her off with a raised hand. We'll have a substitute teacher tomorrow while we ensure your apartment isn't under surveillance, he stated, leaving no room for negotiation. This isn't a request, Ms. Peters. Hannah felt the walls of her carefully controlled life beginning to crumble. I can't just disappear. I have responsibilities. People who depend on me, she argued, thinking of her students from struggling families who counted on her consistency. William's expression softened marginally, the first hint that something human existed beneath the calculating exterior. 24 hours, he compromised. Then we reassess based on what's on this chip and who might know you have it. The SUV's back door opened as if on cue, revealing an interior that looked more like a mobile office than a vehicle. Your principal will receive notification of a family emergency requiring your immediate attention, William assured her. Hannah hesitated at the threshold of this unknown world. Her teacher's salary and tiny apartment suddenly contrasted against the power this man wielded with a single phone call. And if I refuse your protection? William's answer was terrifyingly simple. Then I can't guarantee what happens when the Castellini family realizes you were the last person with my mother before their men lost track of her. Dawn broke over Boston as William's private security team escorted Hannah into a penthouse apartment overlooking the harbor. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a city awakening beneath them, oblivious to the dangerous currents moving beneath its surface. The microchip contains financial records dating back 40 years, William explained, gesturing toward multiple screens where his technical team worked. Evidence that the Castellini family has been laundering money through children's charities across the Northeast. Hannah watched as photographs and documents flashed across screens, smiling politicians accepting oversized checks, hospital wings with the Castellini name emblazoned across their entrances. They built their reputation as philanthropists while using the same foundations to move illegal money. William's jaw tightened as he studied one particular document. My mother was their accountant before she met my father. She created this encryption system, and she's the only one who could have compiled this evidence. The technical team worked with military precision, each person focused on their specific task without unnecessary conversation. Hannah felt jarringly out of place in her rain-stained clothes from yesterday, clutching a cup of coffee that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. The Castellini family killed my father when he tried to expose their operation, William continued, his voice tightly controlled. All these years, my mother let me believe it was a rival business deal gone wrong. Hannah studied his profile, seeing the same elegance that characterized Grace's features, but hardened by years of fighting battles he never fully understood. She was protecting you from a war you couldn't win as a child. Your foundation work with underprivileged schools, Hannah realized suddenly, remembering the Blackwell Education Initiative that had funded her classroom's only computer. That wasn't random. You've been fighting the same battle as your father, just from a different angle. The technical team unearthed another layer of files, photographs of William's father with Grace, both young and smiling beside architectural plans for community centers in neighborhoods the Castellinis had later decimated with drug operations. Their vision for the city stood in stark contrast to what had actually transpired. He wanted to build sanctuaries, William murmured, touching the screen where his father's handwriting outlined plans for after-school programs, places where children could escape the influence of families like the Castellinis, break the cycle of recruitment from vulnerable communities. A notification appeared on a secondary screen. Facial recognition had identified Hannah in the hospital security footage, clear evidence that the Castellinis would now consider her part of William's inner circle. Her simple act of kindness toward Grace had irreversibly altered the trajectory of her life. William's laugh held no humor. Instead, I built my own organization from scratch, became powerful enough to threaten them anyway, all without knowing they were my true enemy. A security alert flashed across the main screen, drawing everyone's attention. Grace's hospital room had been breached overnight. William's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around the coffee cup he held. They didn't find her, he stated with calm certainty. I moved her to a private facility before I met you in the garage. Standard protocol when there's a security concern. Hannah thought of the frightened woman from the street corner, now caught between two powerful organizations. She called them both sides. She's as afraid of your people as she is of the Castellinis. A muscle worked in William's jaw as he processed this information. My organization protects its own. She's my mother. She has nothing to fear from me. Westbrook Elementary is under surveillance, announced a security team member, pulling up street camera footage showing a black sedan parked across from the school entrance. Two men, likely Castellini associates, positioned since 7 a.m. Hannah's heart sank as she recognized her workplace. The colorful bulletin boards visible through the windows, a place of safety now transformed into a potential battleground. My students, 28 kids who have nothing to do with any of this. William's response was immediate and decisive. Send a team, extract the men quietly, no disturbance to the school, he ordered, then turned to Hannah with unexpected gentleness. No children will be harmed because of this situation. The tactical precision with which his organization operated revealed years of similar operations. This wasn't the first time William had neutralized threats without public awareness. Hannah found this simultaneously reassuring and terrifying. How long have the Castellinis known about the evidence? Hannah asked, piecing together the events that had led to her current situation. Why move against your mother now after all these years? William gestured toward a timeline displayed on one of the screens. 3 board members of their primary foundation died last month in seemingly unrelated incidents. My mother must have realized they were tying up loose ends. Your classroom aide called in sick this morning, William noted, displaying another alert on his tablet. Except she wasn't sick. She was detained at the Castellini estate 20 minutes before contacting the school administrator. Hannah felt the blood drain from her face as she recognized Ms. Prentice's profile, a grandmother who'd volunteered at Westbrook for years, beloved by students and staff alike. They're using people I care about to flush me out. The security team identified 3 more Castellini associates, strategically positioned around Hannah's normal travel routes, her favorite coffee shop, the bus stop she used daily, even the community garden where she volunteered weekends. They had studied her life with methodical precision. William's tactical director outlined containment protocols, speaking in the clipped jargon of someone accustomed to neutralizing threats before they materialized. We've deployed counter-surveillance teams to create digital smokescreens. As far as they can tell, Ms. Peters boarded a flight to Chicago 3 hours ago. A security alert interrupted their conversation. Facial recognition had identified 3 known Castellini enforcers entering Hannah's apartment building 15 minutes ago. The implications were clear. They believed she still had the evidence. "They're desperate," William observed, studying the surveillance footage. "Going after a schoolteacher in broad daylight shows they're willing to risk exposure to recover these financial records." Hannah's phone buzzed with text messages from concerned colleagues. "Where are you? Are you okay? The substitute doesn't have your lesson plans." The ordinary concerns of her life continuing while she stood in the center of a gathering storm. Security screens suddenly flashed red as multiple alerts triggered simultaneously. Castellini associates identified at the hospital, at Hannah's apartment, and most alarmingly, at Grace's private medical facility. "They're making coordinated moves," William's security chief announced. William's calm exterior didn't waver, but something dark and dangerous flared in his eyes. "They found her location. We have a leak," he stated, already moving toward the elevator, gesturing for Hannah to follow. "Where are we going?" Hannah asked, hurrying to keep pace with his long strides as they descended to the building's underground garage. "Somewhere even my own people don't know about," he answered, bypassing the SUVs in favor of an unmarked sedan. The safe house was a modest colonial home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the last place anyone would look for one of Boston's most powerful businessmen. "My father bought this house before I was born," William explained as they entered through the garage. Grace was already there, sitting in a sunlit kitchen that looked like it belonged to a normal family. Ceramic mugs hanging from hooks, children's artwork magnetized to the refrigerator. "You brought the teacher," she observed, her eyes softening when they landed on Hannah. "She's involved now, Mother," William replied, his tone conveying volumes of unspoken history between them. "And we need to discuss why you kept the truth about Father's death from me for 20 years. Grace's weathered hands trembled slightly as she smoothed non-existent wrinkles from the tablecloth. "I made a choice between vengeance and your safety. I couldn't bear to lose you both to the Castellinis." William paced the kitchen, a caged predator in domestic surroundings. "I built an empire to protect us, became the very thing Father fought against, all because you let me believe a lie about who killed him." Hannah remained silent, witnessing the collision of decades of secrets and pain between mother and son. The ordinariness of the kitchen made their extraordinary circumstances seem even more surreal. "The evidence on that chip doesn't just incriminate the Castellinis," Grace admitted, finally meeting her son's gaze directly. "The money laundering operation was your father's idea originally. He created it before he understood what the family truly was." William froze mid-stride, the revelation hitting him like a physical blow. My father was part of their organization? The carefully constructed narrative of his life visibly crumbled in his expression. Grace nodded slowly, tears gathering in her eyes. He tried to leave when he discovered they were using the charities to fund human trafficking operations. That's when they killed him. Not for threatening exposure, but for attempting to withdraw his expertise. Hannah watched understanding dawn across William's face, the realization that his crusade against rivals had been built on incomplete information. "You let me believe he was innocent, that I was honoring his memory by building my own power. I let you believe what would keep you alive," Grace countered, reaching for her son's hand. "If you'd gone after the Castellinis as a grieving teenager, you wouldn't have survived a week. I needed you to become strong enough to fight them on your own terms." Security alerts chimed on William's phone. Castellini vehicles converging on their location. "The safe house no longer safe. They've tracked us somehow," he stated, already calculating escape routes and defensive positions. Hannah moved toward the windows, spotting the first black sedan turning onto the quiet residential street. "They'll hurt innocent neighbors in the crossfire," she realized aloud, thinking of the children's artwork on the refrigerator, evidence of families nearby. Grace pulled a weathered photograph from her pocket. William as a smiling 5-year-old with his father, both painting the kitchen walls of this very house. "Your father believed that redemption was always possible, that no one is beyond saving if they truly want to change." Hannah watched as understanding dawned across William's face, not just about the past, but about the future he could shape. The evidence could dismantle the Castellinis' empire, she acknowledged, but it would also hurt hundreds of children who depend on those charity foundations, regardless of where the funding originated. Through the window, Hannah spotted a child's bicycle abandoned on a neighboring lawn as families began hurrying indoors, sensing the dangerous atmosphere that had descended on their peaceful street. The escalating conflict threatened to consume innocent lives, just as it had 20 years ago with William's father. "There's a third option," Hannah suggested, drawing on her years of mediating playground disputes where both sides believed justice favored them exclusively. Use the evidence as leverage not for destruction, but for transformation. Force the Castellini operations into legitimate enterprises under your oversight. William made a decision that transformed him before Hannah's eyes, reaching not for weapons but for his phone. "This ends today," he declared, dialing a number few people possessed. "I'm offering the Castellini family a trade. All copies of the financial evidence in exchange for permanent peace between our organizations. Thank you all for following this story to its conclusion. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments which part of the world you're watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is what keeps me creating these stories for you every week.
Сейчас зайдем, посмотрим, как у них трансляция началась. Если вот рассматривать, я говорю, задумываясь о том, что прожитые типа 30 лет, так смотришь на многих людей, которые сейчас, соответственно, живут, которым в районе 30, которые уже потеряли вообще вкус к жизни, да, радость какую-то от жизни. Таких, причем, кстати, становится все больше и больше. Мне кажется, этот средний возраст, когда говорили, что начинается вот этот кризис среднего возраста, он тоже сместился, как и говорят, что сейчас люди, в принципе, быстрее взрослеют, быстрее осмысливают все, да, почему-то это всегда все в плохом больше ключе на самом деле, да, вот что сейчас дети, к примеру, быстрее взрослеют, вот, и мне кажется, кризис вот этот среднего возраста, он, наверное, тоже сместился, и вот я думаю, что он сместился где-то в районе 30 лет. Опять-таки, это тоже не со всеми, наверное, связано. Не у всех людей так, все люди разные. И как-то приходишь к той мысли о том, что помимо того, что люди сами по себе стали такие вот, наверное, депрессивные, да, времена такие сложные, да, вот это вот еще извне много каких вещей случается, на данный момент, которые людям усугубляют эту ситуацию на самом деле, вот этой депрессии, вот этих кризисов, да, каких-то переходных моментов в жизни. И непонятно, если конец этому всему, да, наступает у людей потом белая полоса в жизни, или они не могут выбраться из нее. Примеров достаточно на самом деле много. К примеру, вот сосед у меня есть такой хороший парень был. И есть, он хороший человек сам по себе. Но вот у него сейчас очень сложные времена такие, как бы дизмораль на него напала. О том, что он не реализовался в своей жизни к 30 годам, что жизнь у него кончена. И не может он выбраться из этой ситуации. Да? Как говорят, если мы говорим, что это мужики такие, да, типа слабые, да, какие-то, безморальные, как бы такие вот, что в основном это случается, наверное, зачастую, может быть, это у мужиков случается в этом возрасте, такой кризис, наверное, да, каких-то неудач в своей жизни, не пришедших ни к чему достойному и хорошему. Но вопрос в том, что это мужики такие, типа слабые, или времена такие стали, что если вот разобраться так, вот, например, возьмем даже с древних времен, когда человеку нужно было добывать пищу самому, да, там убивать мамонтов. Мужику стоило там сходить на охоту. Да? На охоту он сходил, кого-то там добыл добычу, принес домой, да, что-то где-то там поделал дома, и все как бы. Ну и это, возможно, как работа тоже на ежедневной основе, да, была. И как бы мужик в то время считался, но еще воином были, они воинами были, не воевали, да. В любом случае это все такая в основном физическая была работа, типа стратегии именно добычи пищи какой-то себе. Ну, тут вот требовалось, возможно, какое-то знание, да, тут я не спорю. Но в основном это была физическая работа. Если взять, к примеру, не такие далекие времена, когда там люди вот только выходили из пещер, да, взять даже, допустим, 50 лет назад, 100 лет назад, да, когда люди работали на заводах, и что тогда считалось именно мужиком, да, таким. Разница была, наверное, с нынешними временами в том, что если ты работал, к примеру, на заводе на каком-то, то тебе было этого всего достаточно. То есть ты уходил на завод, отработал свое время, да, пришел домой, какие-то тоже там, может, домашние дела, и этого тебе было достаточно на самом деле. Как бы и все, и заключалась вся суть именно мужчин, как бы устроиться, главное, на завод и работать физически, опять-таки, да, получить какое-то образование, так, как бы среднеспециальное, к примеру, да, какой-нибудь токарь, идти на завод, отработать там 8-12 часов. Это не легкая работа, я не спорю тоже с этим. Но опять-таки, этого зато было достаточно. Человек уходил, он отрабатывал там 12 часов и понимал, что ему будет всего достаточно. Ради этого и была, наверное, главная и основная мотивация. Да? И если перенесемся мы, наверное, в наше время уже, сейчас, на данный момент, то есть люди просто не знают на самом деле, как заработать. Как получить жилье, как получить новый автомобиль. То есть способов получения данного результата его нету как такового. Это говоря о том, что ты будешь ходить на работу по 8, по 12 часов, допустим, сутками там работать, да, ты не заработаешь на машину, заработаешь ты на нее через 5 лет, если ты там не будешь ни пить, ни есть, как бы, да. Ну ладно, если вообще не тратить деньги, то заработаешь год. Такого же невозможно, это же только где-то в сказках. С учетом нынешних трат, то есть даже при зарплате какой-то средней, там 100 тысяч рублей, где-то 60, где-то 70, где-то 80. Возьмем от 60, наверное, до 120. То есть, к примеру, достижение результата такой, как, к примеру, квартира, недвижка какая-то своя, это кредиты, ипотеки. То есть вот здесь и сейчас ты берешь. И залазя все глубже и глубже, то есть, как сказать, взял ты, к примеру, себе недвижимость, да, в ипотеку, пусть оно будет так. Помимо тех трат, к примеру, помимо этой ипотеки, там, ремонт и так далее, тебе за эти 20 лет нужно и телефоны менять, и одежду менять, и так далее, там, кушать надо. Машины также в этот же момент менять тебе надо. И то есть это кабала на самом деле такая, она дизморальная. И к чему это все? Что же значит мужик в наше время, который ходит на завод, работает 12 часов, а денег у него все равно нету. Как бы добычу он принести уже не может, да? Он может сходить в лес, но от этого толку особо не будет. И, наверное, сам интернет, во-первых, расфорсил вот это вот все, то, что люди должны зарабатывать какие-то миллионы. Они должны зарабатывать. Это было бы шикарно, если бы каждый зарабатывал. Но каждый по своей сути не может столько зарабатывать, да? потому что не хватит денег, чтобы каждый... А может их и хватит, но никто никому не даст так зарабатывать. И вот возвращаясь, к примеру, к тому, что какая зарплата? Ну, 1300, наверное, должна быть в наше время, чтобы как бы себя, наверное, обеспечивать, да? Хорошо. Одному. И кто же тогда мужик в наше время? Типа, что он должен делать? Что он должен выполнять? Как бы, если он ходит на работу, но смысла от этого нету. Ну, как бы он есть, да, у тебя какой-то идет доход, но его не, если его недостаточно. Смотришь другие профессии, другую работу, да,